Hey there, everybody. What's going on? This is TwoHeadedFlounder. I'm still sick. Apologize. I actually had to take the day off of work for being sick, but I didn't want the day to go to waste. So here we are, bringing you the Raichu GX deck profile. So a couple things about Raichu. I know we already reviewed it in the last episode. Raichu is a bit of an odd GX because Powerful Spark is one of those attacks that has been on a few Pokemon, and the attack has been rather successful on other Pokemon, but obviously the main problem here being that, well, it's Stage 2, so it's going to take up more spaces in the deck to play this card, but also its weakness to fighting is making it very difficult to play. Other than that, it's got a lot of strong support, it's got a lot of Pokemon that can help accelerate energy for it, but the weakness to fighting is really what is just stopping this card from being playable. So it's a little frustrating to see such a good card go to waste, especially when it's Raichu. Pikachu gets a lot of love and support, but Raichu normally doesn't really ever get anything too super good. It's a shame. So Powerful Spark does 20 plus 20 for each lightning energy attached to all your Pokemon in play. So obviously if we have 5 in play and then 2 on the active, we're going to be hitting for a pretty decent amount of damage, and that's pretty solid. And then of course Thunder will do 160 for 3. It'll do 30 damage to itself, but it's not the end of the world for some pretty good damage output, I'd say. And then Voltail GX 120, your opponent's active is now paralyzed, so kind of like Lapras GX's attack. But more relevant because it's a Raichu. So, that being said, of course, again, we are playing 3 copies of this Pikachu because this Pikachu is just the best one we have. 70 HP, resistance to Steel, Thunder Wave for 1, Lightning Energy, flip a coin of heads, your opponent's active is now paralyzed, and then Electro Ball for 50. So, overall, just a pretty solid Pikachu card, and of course the 3/3 line of Raichu as well. So moving on, this deck is technically a Raichu deck, and it is kind of centered around the idea of using Powerful Spark as much as possible, but we are playing 3 copies of Tapu koko-gx. So the ability Arrow Trail essentially is when you play this onto your bench, you get to move as many electric energy from your other Pokemon as you like to this one, and if you do so, make this your new active Pokemon. So essentially what's going to happen is Raichu is going to have a whole bunch of damage on it, has a couple energy. We're going to go ahead and play this for turn. We're going to move all the energy, put Tapu Koko up in the active spot, and we're playing a few other cards in the deck that'll help us do some interesting stuff, like maybe Acerola up Raichu, so that way we've kept all the energy in play, but we're removing, the possibility of this Pokemon getting knocked out. But also we're playing a couple max potions, so when we're in this instance, be able to max potion this up. And then again, if this Tapu Koko in the active spot is about to get knocked out, we swap it around with this Tapu Koko. Then we can either Acerola this while keeping all the energy in play, and or max potion this as well. So that's the idea here. I know that we didn't really get to the item cards yet, and I'm kind of just saying what the whole idea of the deck is, but yeah, that's what we're doing. So Tapu Koko isn't as strong as Raichu for obvious reasons, but Sky High Claws does 130, and then Tapu Thunder GX does 50 times the amount of energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. So if they're playing a whole bunch of energy, you're probably getting a one-shot on whatever it may be. So something that's like Gardevoir or Zoroark or Rayquaza, you can definitely guarantee a one-hit KO on something. So, what is our, I guess, support for Raichu in this deck? Well, on the last one I did Vikavolt, and I did a very weird, mean kind of deck, but this time around we're going all in on the whole Magnezone line. So, I am running the Steel-type Magnemites and a Magneton. Do one because we want a different weakness, because the majority of the deck is weak to fighting. Tapu Koko has no weakness, which is very nice, but we don't want to have everything weak to fighting. Plus, this one has a very solid ability, solid unit, and if it would focus. maybe it's because it's reverse. Nope, it just doesn't want to focus. I need to invest in better equipment. As long as this Pokemon is on your bench, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks. So, essentially, if we're going up against Buzzwole, we're not going to be afraid of losing our Magnemite because they can't be sniped. Same thing as Latios, but it can be sniped by Greninja's ability, so we still have to worry about that. But just being able to sit on the bench and not really have to worry about too much is just really nice, and it it makes you feel good. It does. So next up, we have the copy of Magnezone. I was debating on whether or not an electric Magnezone would be better, but I figure I want to keep the whole different weakness thing going on here. I don't want to evolve into a Magnezone and worry about Buzzwole just one-shotting me. I want Buzzwole to have a little bit of effort put into one-shotting me, so I figured a Steel-type Magnezone would be the way to go there. And of course, lastly, we have our 3 copies of Magnezone. So Magnetic Circuit, we've seen this ability on Magnezone in the past, but you know, this is a different card in general. It's got a different attack. So as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a Lightning Energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. So we've seen this ability with Emboar and Blastoise in the past. This is just attach as much energy from your hand as you want to your Pokemon. And that's obviously ideal for Raichu. As long as we have electric energy in our hand, it's going straight down on one of our guys, and it's powering up Raichu's powerful attack. So there is that. Zap Cannon also will allow us to hit maybe Hoopas and Alolan Ninetales, so we don't really have to worry too much about playing a counter card. Also, Pikachu can hit those guys for 50 as well, so there is a little bit of stuff we can do there. And lastly, for Pokemon, we're playing 2 copies of Lele because obviously we play 2 copies of Lele in just about everything. I kind of would have liked 3, but I don't think there's ever going to be enough bench room to really reliably do that. But also, I don't want to get too clunky, and there's very limited room in this deck. So, Wonder Tag, search our deck for supporter when we play this on our bench, and of course Energy Drive, just an additional backup attacker. Next up, we're playing 4 copies of Cynthia. So again, as always, Cynthia is our best draw support, so we're going to be playing 4 copies of that in most decks because you want to play the best one as much as possible. So if we can manage to get Cynthia off every turn when we don't have the Guzma, that seems like the ideal situation, so we're going to go ahead and do so. So shuffle our hand, draw 6 new cards. Next up, we have 3 copies of Guzma. So not everything in this deck has too much of a heavy retreat cost. The highest is Magnezone and Tapu Kokos, which I believe they're both at 2, which is pretty odd for Magnezone. But yeah, so the retreat cost isn't too high, but still we want this for switching purposes, but also to knock out our opponent's bench Pokemon when we can get a chance to. Very good supporter. So next up, we're playing 2 copies of Lily. I feel that maybe turn 1 Lily could be beneficial in this deck if you can't manage to get a turn 1 Pokemon Fan Club. We are playing Fan Club because, of course, we want to get Magnezones into play at some point, so grabbing Magnemites and Pikachus and all that other stuff early seems like a good idea. But you know, maybe going first and playing a few cards down, and then all of a sudden drawing up into 8 cards, then maybe having some more stuff to do after that could definitely prove to be very useful. But Lily is also just a pretty decent supporter that we have going into the new format. Next up, we have 2 copies of Copycat. We aren't playing any guys that would help us draw out of dead hands. So no Zoroark, no Oranguru, so we kind of want to play as much draw support as possible. Copycat is pretty solid as long as our opponent is really just going hard on drawing cards. We're going to benefit from it. In my testing as of lately, I've noticed that I always get copycat in like the worst situations, so I definitely don't want to max out more than like 2 copies of copycat unless it's a deck like Scizor or not Scizor, Shift Tree, because of course we want to keep the amount of cards in our hand the same as our opponent, things like that. So I'll probably stick with 2 in most decks, but you know, it's good when you can manage it, and then it's terrible when it's not really that good of an option, if that makes sense. I mean, I feel like I'm just stating irrelevant, already common knowledge. There we go. Sorry, I'm sick. I can't think. And I definitely need new recording equipment, seriously. So next up, we have Tate and Liza. I've gone over this card in the past, but just more draw support, honestly. We have a switch effect and a Shauna effect. The Shauna effect, of course, letting us shuffle our hand, draw 5 cards from our deck. Could potentially be better than Copycat in some situations, maybe potentially better than Lily. And then, of course, if we really need to remove something from the active spot, we can go ahead and use the switch effect. So next up, we're playing 2 copies of Acerola because, sorry, as I said earlier, our main objective of this deck is to keep everything from dying. So when we were talking about having Raichu in the active and setting up Tapu Koko with its ability, maybe then we Acerola the Raichu, put the Pikachu back down immediately, create a way to reuse Tapu Lele, but mainly to just make sure we don't lose our Pokemon and keep us at a pretty good amount of prizes on our opponent's side. Now onto our one-off supporters. We're playing 1 copy of Pokemon Fan Club, so that way we can go ahead and turn 1, go for this, grab 2 Magnemite, throw them down on the bench, pass, and just ideally get Magnezone and play the following turn. And lastly, Fisherman, because once we do lose a couple bit of energy, we're going to want to get it back. It's kind of important that we have as much energy in play as possible. And with Palpad, I feel like just a single copy is all we really need, because it's basically 2 uses at that point. Now moving on to our items, we have 4 copies of Ultra Ball because it's the best Pokemon search support that we have. 3 copies of Rare Candy. We're playing a pretty hefty line of Magnemite, Magneton, and Magnezone, so 3 should be sufficient. If it's not, then drop something, add another one if you really need to, but we should definitely be getting Magnezones in play at some point, and if it takes 2 turns, it takes 2 turns, but we do have Magneton as an additional support, but you could always drop the Magneton for additional Rare Candy and just go from there. Next up, 3 copies of Max Potion, because of course we are doing what I've said a couple times now, keeping our Pokemon alive, keeping them healthy. So Max Potion, very good for doing so. Remove all the energy off of one of your Pokemon, but heal all the damage from it. If we have no energy on the Pokemon, then it's just getting back up to full, and that's always great to just pretty much say, hey, the last few turns that you chipped away at my guys, well, they don't really matter anymore. So, you know, Max Potion, great card. It works well in Metagross. Why can't it work well in Raichu GX? I know, 2 totally different decks. 2 copies of Palpad. So, I actually did decide to go with 2 copies of Palpad in this deck because we don't have Zoroark or Oranguru. You could add any Pokemon you want, honestly. Oranguru and Zoroark are both weak to fighting. Raichu's already weak to fighting. Magnezone's already weak to fighting. There's not really some decent support for these guys. There will be. There's some kind of cards out there. But, yeah. So, it's just things are usually weak to fighting that have it. So, there's a Striker that's coming out and everything like that is also weak to fighting. So, yeah. So, being able to reuse Cynthia as much as possible, Guzma, Copycat, Tantalize, Acerola, it just seems like it'd be good. So that's what we're kind of doing here. Hoping for the best. Again, you can drop one of these for anything you might like. I'm just running 2 in mine because I do realize that with a lack of ability drawing, we do need to rely very heavily on our supporters. So lastly, for our items, we have 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher. So, Rescue Stretcher, of course, will allow us to either grab 1 Pokemon from our discard pile, put into our hand, or shuffle 3 Pokemon from our discard pile back into our deck. So, ideally, if we had to, discard something early on, we get it back. Maybe we can get the Magnezone and Rare Candy combo via Rescue Stretcher as well. So, very important. And lastly, we are playing a very hefty amount of energy in this deck. We are playing 12 electric energy because we kind of need to. We need as much electric energy in play as possible. Very important. I know that there is other supporters out there, such as things that will put energy in your hand, things like that, but we're just really just going all in on playing a whole lot, so ideally we'll be drawing into a whole lot. Now for a couple of texts in this deck. We can also play a copy of Dedenne. I honestly don't know how to say this guy's name. But he has the Electric Chain attack. It does 30 plus another 30 if you have an electric Pokemon on your bench. We don't play any items in this deck. But if you wanted to swap a few cards around, throw in a Choice Band with Dedenne, you can one-shot a Raichu GX, and that's pretty solid. You can also play Aether Paradise, because Tapu Koko is a basic, well, also Pikachu. They're both basic electric Pokemon, so that means they'll take 30 less damage from attacks. If you get into those situations where you're using a Pikachu against a Hoopa or a Alola Ninetales, they'll be able to one-shot Pikachu, but with this in play, they will have to two-shot Pikachu, which means you can get a couple of the attacks off, which I think is pretty nice. And if I had to include a stadium, I'd probably do this one. But there is also another stadium idea. Lysander Labs. Pokemon Tool cards in play. Both yours and your opponent's have no effects. We're not playing any. If you wanted to drop a Palpad and maybe a Tantaliza or a Magneton, you could put 2 of these in your deck. All of a sudden, no tool cards have any effect. We're not relying on them anyways, so we're not going to be hit with choice bands if our opponent is using any sort of retreat reducing things or energy keeping tool cards. Then they're just not going to work. So Lysander Lab is pretty cool, and I've already mentioned it a few times, but Instruct Orin Guru would fit into this deck ideally better than a lot of the other things because it's a basic and Instruct, but again, we're playing 2 Palpads and a pretty heavy lineup of supporters, so hopefully we'll be fine on that end. But there is also the option of running Orin Guru because it's still a very solid card. So that's really going to be it for this deck. I know it's a bit of an odd one. I tried my best. Raichu GX is a very difficult card to make work, honestly. There is not a whole lot of positive things about it. There's a lot of negative things about it, such as weakness, and not really a whole lot of other additional guys that really work too well with it, besides like energy accelerating guys. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, I do apologize for being sick. I don't want to put this day to waste, though. I want to get some content out for you guys. We did hit 300 subs. I want to thank all of you so much for watching and showing some I can't think of the word. I'm sick. Don't forgive me. I wanted to show my appreciation to all you guys. So thank you guys all for watching. Until then, I'll see you all next time.